Welcome everybody to PAVE's 121st virtual panel. Today we are going to be talking about workforce development in the AV industry. My name is Caitlin Magny Miller. I'm PAVE's communications manager, and I'll be your moderator today. And let's take a moment to introduce our guests, and we'll get started with the conversation. So today we are joined by speakers, including Nicole DuPuis. She is the policy and advocacy lead at May Mobility. Rich Granger, he is the Managing Director of Workforce and Economic Development at DriveOhio. And we also have Matt Blackburn here. He is the Senior Manager of Government Relations at Aurora. So let's get started. And I'm going to start with you, Nicole. Just very broadly, how would you describe the current media narrative around workforce development right now? And would you say that's reflective of reality?
Yeah, I think what we read about in the news or the picture that is painted kind of in the media around workforce development, and especially as it relates to the AV sector, is this kind of picture of conflict and consternation, right? Between the autonomous vehicle industry and, say, organized labor in some cases. Or at the very least, there's this idea that the industry is deploying these new technologies without really considering workforce needs and implications. And on both of those accounts, I think that there's a reality that is so much more nuanced than that, so much different than that. So first and foremost, I think that there needs to be this acknowledgement about the distinctions between the differences between movement of goods and movement of people, essentially transit versus trucking. These are really two different conversations, and I think they get lumped together a lot. And I will just say I think there are some real distinctions between these two things. And I'll offer the caveat that May Mobility is an autonomous microtransit company, so transit and the transit industry is often the frame of reference that I'll be using in this conversation. And the reality is that the transit industry, I'll speak to that, is currently facing a workforce challenge driven by what I've come to call like the three R's. So you have recruitment, retention, and retirement. Difficulty recruiting new workers, difficulty retaining those workers, overall shortage of workers that's been exacerbated by the pandemic, and an aging workforce writ large that's kind of reaching this retirement cliff for the industry. So those are the realities of the transit industry. And I think that there's a real opportunity for autonomy there, not just to fill that shortage, but, you know, as a new pathway to bring new individuals into transit and into that workforce pool.
Absolutely. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the US AV Jobs Coalition, which many of you are now familiar with. And I want to ask Matt, the goal of the coalition really is to compile facts and resources to share a broader perspective of what a future AV workforce could look like. Can you talk a little bit about the overarching goals of the coalition for those who aren't familiar?
Sure. Sure. So, I mean, we had a couple goals when we started this. And the first was to really develop a fact-based approach to AV workforce, to the workforce discussion, right? You know, as Nicole said, it kind of go all over the place sometimes on this topic, but we really wanted a fact-based approach. The second one was, you know, to kind of build this data-driven understanding of what the AV workforce is and what the workforce of the 20th century really looks like. And that's, you know, those were kind of our two first goals. But the third one was really to provide a way for the public and for policymakers to have tools to evaluate what's really happening. You know, kind of putting aside the hyperbole, you know, no fear, just facts. You know, just focus on what the facts are. And this site provides an opportunity for folks of all different perspectives on the AV space. Aurora's on the trucking side, right? So we work with trucking companies. It provides us a tremendous opportunity for the public and for the public or policymakers to really lean in and say, okay, this is what's actually happening, not just what I think could be happening or what I hear might be happening. So when you go through our site, if you take a look at US AV Jobs Coalition, it's a really easy site to use. You can go through, and I think one of the keys is to look at the partners that we have. They range from chambers of commerce to tech councils to companies like Aurora and many other AV companies. but also, trucking associations, government agencies, folks that are really focused on the workforce issues and to really understand how there will be changes as we move forward. But, I think when you look at the site and you talk to people in the industry, a lot of those changes are going to be really positive.
Absolutely. And I'm going to turn it over to Rich. As somebody who represents the public sector, what role do you see government policies and initiatives playing here in supporting AV workforce development?
Sure. Yeah, for context, so DriveOhio being an initiative of the Ohio Department of Transportation, we're operating at the state level. We coordinate with local and regional partners and federal partners as well. And there's, at least three areas where those uh, government policies and initiatives work together. So one is resource alignment. So finding ways to leverage existing programs that cut across multiple industries. So in Ohio, we've got programs like Tech Cred, where you can get paid employers are paid to upskill their employees with new and emerging skills. We've got workforce strategies that are statewide that can focus on a specific sector. We've done that for 5G and broadband. Now we're doing it for automotive and advanced mobility. And then we've got even things like industry recognized credentials to support high school graduation requirements. So activating those statewide systems with specific focus for an industry segment is very helpful. And that all leads to one of the other points, which is coordination with employers, with industry associations to make sure that everything, all these credentials are industry recognized, aligned with hiring needs. And then one of the other things that I think we can do at statewide scale is spotlighting and helping to scale best practices. We've heard about, some great programs sometimes that we're actually directly involved with at an elementary school in Central Ohio. We can share that around the state. Same with adult credentialing through some of these manufacturing associations that we work with. So a lot of ways to just help accelerate the impact of great work that others are doing.
Right. I'm going to come back to you, Nicole. I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about the workforce development initiatives that May Mobility is engaged in and what your plans look like for the next couple of years. And then furthermore, what kind of partnerships does that entail? And how do you work with groups like labor unions?
Yeah, so overall, our goal at May is to support cities and states in building these long-term roadmaps for what they envision the future of work in the AV industry can look like. So we do that through building relationships and starting initiatives with transit agencies, labor unions, universities, state workforce development boards, other community organizations that have a stake in workforce development. And we're really committed to supporting regional workforce development goals as they exist, prior to our deployment in that area. On workforce policy, we work, of course, with organizations like PAVE and Partnership for Transportation, Innovation, and Opportunity, other national, state, and local groups to, kind of engage in those discussions. We also provide workforce development opportunities more directly, including high school campaigns that produce or promote STEM and innovation career paths and pathways for new entrants to the workforce to become these sort of new roles, things like vehicle safety operators, site supervisors, vehicle technicians, future ambassadors, and teleassist operators. So we're working with several of our city clients to do things like that, to build out those kind of new pipeline opportunities. And that looks in some ways like development of autonomy pathways for students at technical and community colleges, certification programs, finding roles for operators that are already in the system to do more autonomy-centric things or to approach an autonomy framework. Rethinking the rider experience so that we're training AVOs to really serve as those community liaisons, and using autonomy as a pathway for recruitment, particularly in the transit industry, which is struggling to entice new individuals to come into the transit industry. And we think autonomy is a way to say, hey, come learn something new, come be part of this emerging field. So it looks a lot of different ways depending on the partner and depending on what the public sector driven workforce development goals are. But we do try to, from the very beginning, plug in and understand what the existing workforce development plans look like in a region.
I think that's key. And Matt, I'm going to ask you a similar question. What type of workforce development programs is Aurora working on? And what are some of the key skills or maybe qualifications that these programs are working to develop?
Sure. Well, it's a great question. Excuse me. One of the places that I think we see in Pittsburgh a lot, and I'm sure we're not the only company that experiences this, but oftentimes you have a hard time filling those spots that kind of connect the digital and the physical, right? So the individuals who are building our LiDAR or who are building the sensors might not be the same people who are replacing or repairing or troubleshooting those things, right? And so there's sometimes a little bit of a disconnect. And those individuals who are the kind of the physical side of this, who are building these vehicles, who are retrofitting these vehicles, they have to be able to talk and communicate with the engineers. And the engineers have to be able to communicate with the folks who are on the ground doing this, right? And so I think a lot of the focus that we had, we created a really innovative program with a college in Pittsburgh. Now, unfortunately, the college had some financial issues, and so we're looking for another partner. But one of the things we did with this school was create an 18-month associate's degree program to create service engineer techs. And the whole point of this was, how do you get mechanics of the 21st century? Well, you don't get them by talking about it. You get them by building a curriculum with industry and the schools, and then, creating a pathway. We've got over 100 robotics companies in Pittsburgh. There's plenty of places for people to work. We didn't want a program that was just for Aurora. We wanted a program that was for the region, right? And we have interns, we have industry days, and we're right on the verge of hiring one of our first graduates from this program. So it's really been fantastic. We're looking for some new partners, some new schools to work with on this. But this is a really important part, connecting the digital and the physical in a real meaningful way. That's where you're going to see a lot of these jobs in the future.
I think you make some great points. I love what you said about a mechanic of the 21st century, because it's certainly some new skills and qualifications required for these new roles. Rich, I'm going to turn back to you here. What types of workforce activities is DriveOhio prioritizing? And how do you think industry and government can really partner for success in this area?
Sure. So at DriveOhio, we say we work from pre-K to PhD. So we cover all the ages, right? And we're focused in on these emerging technologies. So for our youngest learners, our emerging workforce, we have these engaging, hands-on, immersive STEM and STEAM experiences that are linked to real-world opportunities and challenges. So, to the part of your question about how to engage industry, we're always looking for authentic problem statements that students can dig into. So we've done mapping exercises with programmable robots that mirror on-the-road deployments that we've had in the state of Ohio. We have teams of third-grade students in Reynoldsburg doing city planning for like a month or two. Now, the teachers get all the credit for coming up with this awesome program, but the students are interviewing city engineers. They're building a small course for these robots to follow. They're creating videos with QR codes. They're practicing their presentation skills. Third grade, amazing, right? So back to that idea of spotlighting and scaling, then what we try to do is promote that statewide. We've rolled that into curriculum that's part of our DriveOhio Educator Toolkit as a statewide platform to scale all that. We're doing some of the same type of work with higher education. We've done capstone projects and innovation challenges over the years. Often we are practicing what we preach. We have hired high school interns. We have hired college interns directly out of some of those workforce programs. And we encourage all of our employer partners to do the same. We're seeing it across both ground and air mobility in the areas that we work. Students that have kind of graduated from some of our programs have now gone off to get jobs in the industry, which is the ultimate metric of any workforce development program.
Really cool. I can say I was not involved in any city planning in third grade. So that's a really awesome to hear about. I want to switch gears a little bit to talk more largely about the economic impacts of some of these workforce programs. So Nicole, May Mobility has been involved in several pilot projects and deployments across the US. Can you talk about how these projects have impacted local economies and what role do you see AVs playing in enhancing the overall economic growth at the local and municipal level?
Yeah, so at the most fundamental level, when we deploy our services in a new location, we are opening up a local office, we're opening up a local garage, we're hiring locally for all positions, right? So this includes things like site managers, maintenance technicians, AV operators, teleassist operators. And there are times we get, you know, hundreds, thousands of applicants for those jobs, for those AVO jobs. People are very interested in being part of an emerging field. So we are adding new jobs to a local economy. There's also the addition of AV transit, AV microtransit as a new tool in kind of the mobility ecosystem or in the transit toolbox, as we sometimes say. So this is a new mode essentially to give people access to jobs, to give people access to economic opportunity. So, it's great if there are jobs in your area, not so great if you have no way to get to them, right? So we're creating new opportunities for people to have access to economic opportunity. And that right there is probably the real robust economic impact that we're having in a local economy.
Absolutely. I'm going to come back to Matt here. So AVs are obviously going to impact and transform traditional driving jobs in some way. How is Aurora working to really ensure that these shifts lead to economic resilience and opportunity? And how do you communicate that message to the communities that are impacted there?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I do believe we're going to see enormous impacts of AVs, but I think by and large, they're going to be very, very positive. I mean, I'll give you an example. If you're a truck driver today, you can retire as a truck driver. The demand is so intense in certain regions, really anywhere in the country, but certain regions are really, really intense on CDL drivers. So if you're a truck driver today, you'll retire as a truck driver. But a lot of truck drivers, a lot of CDLs who come and work at Aurora, they tell us that one of the main reasons they want to work here is they want to be home with their family. I mean, the average American truck driver spends 300 days away from home each year. Now, there's a narrow set of people who are very drawn to that, but it's not huge, right? And so having having lines that you could come home and be with your family that evening and go out and drive a short haul route is far more appealing. I mean, I had one of our CDLs down in Texas said, I think Aurora probably saved my marriage, right? Because he's home every day with his family. So being a truck driver is difficult and it's exceptionally dangerous. And if AVs can cut down on those long haul routes between, let's say, Fort Worth and El Paso or El Paso to Phoenix, not only will you see incredible improvements in safety, but you will allow truckers to stay on routes that are closer to home and hopefully, improve their quality of life. You can look on our website today. I mean, we've got a number of jobs that are jobs that only really exist because of the AV industry. I mean, Nicole mentioned a whole bunch at May Mobility. We've got very similar ones. Ours are a little more heavy on the trucking side, obviously, but terminal operators, we've got command center specialists, we've got fleet dispatch, the list goes on and on. These are all good family sustaining jobs. Like I mentioned earlier, LiDAR sensor engineers, right? People who can troubleshoot, people who can look at these, what's working, what's not working on this truck, repair it, send the truck out the next day, right? These are all jobs that exist because of the industry, not, there's enormous potential here. And I think people see it when they get into the industry.
Really good points. Rich, given that you are focused on Ohio, obviously, how do you see the development of AV technology influencing Ohio's economy and particularly in terms of job creation and upskilling opportunities?
Sure. Yeah. So, Ohio has traditionally been a very strong automotive state, and we also have quite a bit of aerospace. So a lot of skill in building things, but also testing, deploying research through our university networks. And we're seeing those opportunities across the board. So in the research and testing space, whether it's a place like Transportation Research Center in Central Ohio, one one of North America's largest independent proving grounds. Many of the companies we're talking about here today are most likely testing there. I sign a waiver every time I go there, so I don't know if they are or not. Who knows, right? But there's a lot going on there. And then we're seeing a lot of startups coming up in this space too. There was a great story coming out of the Dayton region where you had Oculi as a startup that spun out of Wright State University, acquired by Ambarella. Now they're growing, scaling, deploying, and hiring in that region. We see it at airports. We see Arrigo just announcing just recently at CVG Cincinnati Northern Kentucky Airport. They've got jobs posted live right now for an autonomous repair technician. We see the delivery robots that the students, oh my goodness, the students love to talk about the delivery robots on campus. Every time I go to the Ohio State main campus, I see like 3 of them lined up at the crosswalks. And you've got robot technicians, taking care of these robots. Those jobs pop up pretty much year round. So through the whole spectrum, and you've got automotive maintenance as another category. We talk with our friends at AAA, not just in Ohio, but they're doing work at the national scale on the future of automotive repair. And while you cannot go to a dealer's lot and buy a self-driving vehicle today, just to be clear, you can buy a vehicle that has adaptive cruise control and all these other sensors, which are the harbinger of future higher levels of automation as the technology becomes more widely available. So you need to repair all that stuff. AAA helped build some training programs for their staff at automotive repair shops that's listed on our tech cred system. So back to that resource alignment I talked about earlier, finding the latest credentials, getting them out into the workforce with industry and employer partners. That's how the system's supposed to work.
Absolutely. So Nicole, you touched on this briefly earlier, but I want to come back to it. If our aim moving forward here is to develop programs that are creating jobs, then we have a lot of roles to fill, and we have to really consider recruitment and retention. How does May Mobility approach this?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier the challenges currently faced by the transit industry, the 3 R's: recruitment, retention, and retirement. And we really do see AV microtransit as kind of a pathway to attract new individuals into the transit industry, to widen that workforce pool, to create new job pipelines. We have 2 pathways programs that we work with high schools and technical colleges to put in place. We have an operations pathway and a technical pathway. So in the operations pathway, we're facilitating and training for future roles such as operations assistants, support coordinators, operations support managers, depot operations positions, fleet attendants. And this gives students the opportunity to learn and participate in general field operations of an active AV system. We also have a technical pathway where we're facilitating and training for roles such as autonomous vehicle operators, remote assistants, teleassist operators, AV maintenance coordinators, or AV maintenance managers. And then this pathway, students start on a more technical path and dive deeper into understanding of the technical aspects of autonomous vehicles, from basic vehicle maintenance to sensor calibration, how the vehicle learns the environment, the real nuts and bolts of the actual technology stack of the vehicle. So those are kind of 2 pathways programs that we've developed. There are also so many other opportunities that exist in the AV industry, not just for STEM-oriented folks, but for people like me: policy and advocacy, community engagement, other thought leadership type of roles. So, we're always keeping this in mind, and we're always kind of thinking about different ways that we can develop those pipelines, widen those pipelines, and get folks into this new and emerging industry.
That's fantastic. And great to see that you're really approaching all aspects of the industry and not just the technical roles.
Right. Yep.
Rich, I'm going to turn back to you. You recently published the 2024-2025 edition of the DriveOhio Educator Toolkit. How do you think resources like this can get K-12 students really interested and excited about this industry? And how does that tie into our larger workforce conversation?
Sure. Yeah. So the DriveOhio Educator Toolkit, it's a free collection of online resources. We keep adding to it year after year. It's got curriculum. It's got career connections, resources for career exploration, K through 12. It's got links to additional resources like portable innovation labs that can be checked out statewide and borrow equipment like 3D printers and drones and robots and all that. And how do we get interest? I think the technology sometimes speaks for itself, but I really love the point that Nicole made about the importance of all the roles that are possible here. And so when we're in a classroom, we're speaking to all those young ladies and all those young men that are, for whatever reason you're interested, we got a spot for you. If you're a good storyteller, you can get involved with social media and marketing. I came up through engineering, and I gotta say, some engineers are not great communicators. It happens, right? So we need everybody to be able to do this. It's a team sport, and we absolutely emphasize being inclusive in the work that we do. We're kicking off a new project this week with Columbus School for Girls that's going to leverage a previous research project with the rural automated driving systems in Southeast Ohio. Can't wait to share more about that. And in the world of STEM that we operate in every day, the phrase I've heard many times is you want to make it to the dinner table. You want those students to come home and talk to their family about what they did today and not just say, what happened today? Oh, nothing. They want to, when you start that conversation, then it can lead to another conversation and more. And we're bringing the parents along for the ride too when we do that. So I think that's what success looks like.
That's awesome. Really, really cool. I'm going to end with a question for Matt here. How do you think we can really move these workforce initiatives forward into more tangible outcomes and some forward momentum? And how do you think we can kind of scale these small success stories into larger and more impactful programs long term?
Yeah, this is a hard one because there's so many stories to talk about, but I think I'll talk about one in particular. Many people don't know this, but Bozeman, Montana is the photonics capital, probably of the United States, maybe of the world, right? And so photonics, for those of you who don't know, it's like the study of light, right? It's how we get LiDAR. And so years ago, when Aurora had decided, hey, we're going to be doing trucking and we need LiDAR that can see 400 meters, like 4.5 football fields out, this was a big focus, right? And so we build all of our LiDAR in Bozeman, Montana. Well, we've been partnering with Gowden College and Montana State University, and this entire ecosystem has been built in Bozeman. And just about 6 weeks ago, they were awarded a $41 million federal EDA grant for a hub that is really what they call the Headwaters Hub. That's going to just incredibly build this facility out from what it is now. So there's an example of something that is not, maybe we don't always think of LiDAR as just being autonomous, right? You've got LiDAR in a level 1 vehicle sometimes. And so this is something that is used in lots of different industries and lots of different applications. But here's something that now you got a $41 million federal investment into Bozeman, Montana to build out something like this. The ripple effect of this is enormous. And this really comes to us because we've partnered with some really, really smart, really capable people. And we've looked around and said, what does the community need? And what does the country need? We need this in our country right now. So that's just one example that we've been working on.
Really great example. And really great timing. We've got 1 minute left. So thank you so much, Nicole, Rich, and Matt for taking the time to join us today. This was a really good conversation. As a reminder, we will be posting the full video recording on our YouTube channel and website later this afternoon. So be sure to follow us on social media at PAVE Campaign to see that as soon as it's released, or check out our website at pavecampaign.org. And thank you to everybody who attended. We so appreciate your participation. Thanks, everybody.